Happy Monday, everyone. This week's bonus interview is an epic one. I was lucky enough to interview writer, producer, showrunner, creator, William Bickley, Bill Bickley. And we talked about all the amazing shows he worked on, like Family Matters, creating that, writing that. And he tells me a little bit about how Steve Urkel came to be. And I'm going to tell you about it. Not right now. You're going to have to listen to the entire interview. But first, we got to play that beautiful bonus theme song by my buddy TJ. Hit it.
When you're looking for more and there's no place to go, it's a sequels only bonus show. It's not about sequels this time, you know, it's a sequels only bonus show. Doug and his pals, well, they know what to do, talking about movies without a part two. Looking for more and there's no place to go, it's a sequels only bonus show. Talking to stars with Doug did sold, it's a sequels only bonus show. Sequels only bonus show.
Hey there, Doug here. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe. This week's bonus interview is probably one of my favorites because obviously I talk to actors that are in a lot of movies I like. There's something different about TV series, especially ones that were on T.G.I.F, like Family Matters, Perfect Strangers, Step by Step. That's like family time growing up. And talking to the creator of those, the writer of those, the producer, William Bickley, Bill Bickley was probably one of the coolest things because that's, and you'll hear in our conversation, that's when families used to sit together and just watch shows together about other families watching families. But Bill was a lot of fun to talk to because not only did he work on those shows, he started off on Happy Days. So he learned a lot from Garry Marshall, and he worked on so many different pilots and worked with so many people over the years. You're going to love him. So without further ado, here is Bill Bickley. This is awesome, man.
I'm all angles and stuff.
Yeah. Well, you've directed, so I'm sure that you're all of that.
Usually somebody else is sitting here.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, this is great.
Well, good to finally connect. I know, it's been a little hectic these days for some people. I don't understand why.
It was so cool when I was talking to Susie and she mentioned your name and she mentioned Morgan Fairchild.
Yeah.
And she told me the story, which we'll kind of talk about a little bit, like when you got her on Welcome Back, Kotter. Was that what it was?
I hired her on Happy Days.
That's what it was, Happy Days.
Later
Yeah.
She did Kotter, after that. But when she first came out from New York, I gave her a part in Happy Days.
No, but it was pretty cool when she mentioned that, and she's like, yeah, he went on to do these other shows, and like after we were done, I looked you up, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy worked on all these things. So I was like, if you ever talk to him, because she's like, oh, I run into him all the time and talk to him. I'm like, man, if he would want to talk to me, that'd be cool. So I'm happy that I was able to. This is it. So how did it all start? So you grew up in Dallas, right?
Grew up in Dallas, Texas, with Susie. And out of high school, I went to Baylor University and majored in English. And then went into the military for.
I saw that.
There was a war going on back then. I did not have to attend that war, but I did attend the military. And then straight out of the military in 1970, April of 1970, I think I just turned 23, if my math is right. And through a divine intervention, I got out of the military suddenly and backed up, and I was out here within a week or so from the time I got out of the military, and still had a military haircut in 1970. When if you were a breathing male that did not vote for Nixon, your hair was down to your shoulders.
Yeah.
And I had this, and what people would call a buzz cut now. So it was weird, but yeah, I came here as soon as I could get here.
Wow. So what drew that path, like to go to school for writing and like English? What in high school, was there a show that you were like, I need to do Hollywood and work on TV?
I decided to do this because my family got a television set in 1952.
It's a big deal.
When I was, 5 years old. And I never wanted to do anything else.
Oh, that's amazing.
I wanted to write. Eventually, I figured out that other people, I wanted to make those things happen. What I saw on television as a kid or in movies, I wanted to take what was in my head, my imagination, and I wanted to make it happen like that.
Yeah.
So I never wanted to do anything else.
That's awesome.
And I started trying to write when I was like 10 or 11 years old, and it was very sophisticated too. And then I did that. How I know Susie Lanier is, and I call her Susie because I'm stuck in our high school names.
Yeah.
So I may call Morgan Fairchild, I may call her Patsy McClinney. So forgive me, but my name is still my name, so that's not changed. But I was a football player and in the drama department in high school, which was very confusing to my father.
I bet.
But and I did plays at Theater 3 in Dallas, and they did a couple of. There weren't many professional theaters. Theater 3, yeah, that was the name of it. I did a play there with Morgan.
Oh, wow.
So I was always knocking on that door, and I got to Baylor, and they had no film department.
Really?
They didn't have a single writing class.
Oh my God.
And I had gone there to play football, which lasted for about 2 weeks.
Oh my God. What position did you play?
Well, I went, I guess you'd say, down the food chain. Running back, wide receiver, defensive back, English major. So that didn't last long, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Good thing, because it gave me time to just dream and stuff, I guess.
Yeah. What was the first thing so you said you packed up after you're done with the Navy. What was the first thing that you did when you got there? Did you have any connections out there already?
Well, I had one connection. It's always good to have somebody.
You got it.
And just to even have a place to start. And nothing is ever a guarantee. And man, it's fast for some people. It's slower for others, but persistence is kind of important. I don't know how much persistence I had because it wasn't tested. I sold my first script in about 10 days.
Oh my God.
And it was just a story. There was a show called Love American Style, which had, it was a 1 hour show. It had 2 comedy segments that were, 12 minutes long, and 2 comedy stories that were 8 minutes long. So it had 4 comedy stories. And later, The Love Boat was fashioned after that, but Love American Style, they were all separate stories.
Oh, okay.
So my connection, who was a writer, he was a successful writer, but he couldn't just sort of like open the door for me. What he did do, and it was important, was he said, if you can come up with a story for an episode of Love American Style, then I'll tell the showrunners the story or the idea, and if they like it, maybe they'll bring you in to pitch it to them.
Oh, sweet.
Now, it was great because those stories on Love American Style were, like I say, 8 minutes to 12 minutes, so they were short scripts.
Yeah.
And they liked one of the stories. So I went in and met with the producers, scared to death. I took a tape recorder so I'd make sure. I knew I was going to be really nervous, and I was so nervous I couldn't hold a pencil. So we had this meeting, and they sort of walked back and forth and worked on the story and gave me notes and stuff. Now, the script had not been written because that's not the way TV works. They hire you to write the script, you don't bring a script in. So, but I had a tape recorder. So I knew no matter how nervous I was, I had a backup. I got home, the tape recorder hadn't worked. I had nothing. So that's when I realized, I sat down, I remembered everything, and wrote this little, I think it was this script length for the 8 minute segment was like 12 pages. So I sat down and wrote the script.
Yeah.
And they really liked the script. And Karen Valentine and Davy Jones from the Monkees.
Oh, nice.
It was called Love and the Wrong House, I think. And it was about a guy who goes to elope, old-fashioned style ladder at the window with his girlfriend, and he gets the wrong house because it's one of those neighborhoods where all the houses look alike.
Yeah.
And the wrong girl in the wrong house is Karen Valentine, and he realizes he's blown his relationship. So they talk and then fall in love in 8 minutes. So that was the first one. And then they said, write another one. And at Paramount in those days, they didn't have staffs as big as shows do now.
Yeah.
Usually there was one entity, a writer or a team on each show. They were called story consultants. And all the other scripts were written by outside writers. So So Love American Style had me write a script right away. And then down the hall at Paramount of this particular building, there was a show called Barefoot in the Park, which was an African-American version of Barefoot in the Park, Neil Simon's play, which was executive produced by Garry Marshall. And then down at the end of the hall was Garry Marshall's office because he was also starting up The Odd Couple. Well, Barefoot in the Park heard about me. And when youth makes people think you're smarter than you are. I was 23, so because I could put a sentence together, I was a genius. Right? So I was a genius all the way down the hall. And these scripts were not really good. Till I got to Garry Marshall called me in. And he said, Bill, everybody's saying you're really good, but you're not that good. And he took me under his wing and spent, years, my whole life on and off.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Teaching me not only how to write, but when we started Happy Days and I was the showrunner at 26, I'd never run a show. He taught me about the ins and outs and the fights with the network. And he was a great teacher for a lot of us.
Yeah. So you said that first script, it wasn't that good. Did you keep any of those mementos?
Yeah, I've got them. Every once in a while,
cool.
If I think I've gotten really good, I go back and read one of those to realize how far I've come. So it makes me feel like at least I've made progress.
That's good. Now I know. Yeah. That's so cool. And then I see it's funny that IMDb doesn't have all these.
No.
Some of these aren't on there. It's crazy. Well, I guess back then maybe they didn't register it the way they do now.
No. Everybody's just guessing at everything in Hollywood, including IMBD or MB or whatever it is. Oh yeah, nobody has the comprehensive records. It's always been that way.
Yeah, like All in the Family. You worked on all from the beginning and after Love American Style. You look at all the shows that you worked on. They're like cornerstone American shows. They were huge. All in the Family.
They weren't then.
It's unbelievable, right?
Then they were just shows trying to stay on air. All in the Family. I have a writing credit for the first season of All in the Family. Again, I'm a 26-year-old white boy from. The only character I knew from my life was Archie Bunker. He was my father. So everything else was my hair still hadn't grown out. And so I went to meet with Norman Lear, and in this tiny, grubby office, I think at 20th Century Fox, if I remember correctly, I'm not sure. And he was very grumpy that day, and he showed me the original pilot, the only pilot they had then, of All in the Family, and Rob Reiner was not in it.
Oh wow!
There may be a couple other people that weren't in it, but it was this black and white dupe of the pilot, and it was nice, but it was he said "damn" and "hell," I think, and it was shocking. And so Norman and the pilot, as I understand, as I recall, had been rejected a couple of networks, I think. And so I don't think Norman and I don't know what Norman thought, but my impression was he thought, well, this is not going to last. So again, that worked to my favor. He said, well, give this 23-year-old kid a script, and who knows, nobody will remember that.
Yeah.
So, nobody knows a show is going to do what it does, and most shows don't. And then All in the Family becomes this classic. And we were all just, I say we, I wasn't really a part of All in the Family except for that one day and that one story. But,
no, I think that's pretty cool when you look at your IMDb, and we'll get a little farther down into it. But it's funny to know, because you've worked on a lot of pilots, and just knowing like, do you know like what's going to hit or not? Like in the 80s, there's a bunch of them that you worked on, but then like shows like Family Matters, and I guess we'll just talk about those, like Family Matters from the beginning. I think that show is so remarkable. I told you we were having a marathon last night, and going back and watching that first episode, that's Urkel.
Which show are you talking about?
Family Matters.
Okay.
That pilot episode, like it really holds up. Like I'm a diehard Seinfeld fan. If you go back and watch the first episode of Seinfeld, it's just, you maybe watch it because you know the rest of the show and how good it gets, but it's really not that good. But the jokes in that one were so good, and just think the most influential character didn't even show up yet.
Yeah, every series. I know a friend of mine, Lowell Gans, who with Babalu Mandel wrote the movies, Parenthood, and and Splash, and all these great movies that Ron Howard directed. Lowell once said to me, you should get an Emmy just for getting a show on the air, because it goes through such a gauntlet of network fears and studio fears, who are afraid of the audience that will reject it. So it keeps getting filed down and diluted and stuff. And so you're lucky if you have anything of any cleverness left by the time you get on the air.
Yeah.
Well, I guess fortunately, Family Matters was a show where and there were, I'm not the only one involved, where we already had Perfect Strangers that was a hit.
Yeah.
So they left us alone a little bit more. The more hits you have, like Chuck Lorre, they left alone after a while. Well, that was the position we were in. So we did it very quickly, and it was also considered a soft show, which it was. So basically, all I know I wanted to get out of the pilot was sort of the heart of it, the relationships. And then if we could make it funny, then God bless us. But every pilot is like a first draft of a series. And the series, you don't know what the series is until after at least one season, or at least halfway through the first season. Sometimes it takes longer than that to really find it. Yeah. And it's a combination of the actors, developing the characters, and the writers, and what we do, what you're searching for. It's like Happy Days. Yeah. Everybody knows how Happy Days evolved. And Fonzie was a one-line character. The theory was Fonzie would just say something really wise at the end of each episode. Yeah. Well, we realized pretty quickly we weren't wise enough to think of one wise thing at the end of the episode. So he said more. But, it sort of takes shape. So, no, you do the best you can. And then that show, but I think the thing it had at the very beginning was what I would just simply call the heart. Yeah. And what a cool cast, too. Like, I don't know if you watched on Netflix, they had it was like a 4-part series. They did movies that made us. And they did Die Hard, Home Alone, and Ghostbusters. I forget the other one, but it was really cool. The story that Carl Winslow, Reginald Vell Johnson, the story he tells about the audition for Die Hard, and he was going to give up acting. And then I think his mom told him to go to this audition, and then look at that. And then Die Hard came out in 88. This started in 89, I think. Well, Die Hard, his performance in Die Hard is the reason we did that series.
Really?
Well, yeah. It was his performance in Die Hard that made us say, well, the network was saying, hey, how about a black family?
Yeah.
I think they said, somebody said it. Because I don't know that I'm the most likely person to come to for a African American dominant show. They said, how about a black family? Well, we were really high on Reggie from his performance in Die Hard, which was
cool.
like 2 weeks ago, or, at the time. It was very fresh. So we wanted to do a series that starred him. And then Darius McCrary, we saw Mississippi Burning. He was a child actor in Mississippi Burning and killed. It was probably not a term you should say about that movie, but but he was this little kid. He had this a scene or two in that movie that just is amazing. So we had this, and he was just like 12 by then. So this incredible kid actor, and Kelly was a wonderful. We already had these great child actors in Kelly and Darius and Jamie, who was much younger.
Yeah.
So, and then Rosetta Lenoir was this stage actress of renown. So going into it, we had a cast that you would kill for.
So Jaleel White, when was he brought in? Because I know his first appearance was the fourth episode.
No,
when was he brought on?
Probably deeper than that.
Oh, it was? Wow.
Jaleel?
Yeah.
We're talking about Jaleel, right?
Yep.
It was halfway through the first season.
Wow.
And I just did an interview with Entertainment History, I guess, is what it was. They're doing the history. I'm in the history now.
Nice.
God, I lived long enough to be history. But doing a television series, it eats up scripts really fast. Unless you're really organized and stay ahead, about halfway through the season, you're desperate. You're running low on scripts, and there comes the time. Now, my partner and I got better at this as time went on, so we didn't fall behind.
Yeah.
But that first season, but before we got to Christmas, we start shooting usually in July or August. By closing in on December, we were out of scripts and we had to shoot the next week. So we said, okay, we'll need a script by Monday. So we had done a pilot, and I'm not going to say who it was for. It didn't sell, but we had done a pilot. Wait a second, I lost your picture. We had done a pilot that didn't sell.
Yeah.
And in it was this little kid, because it's about a father who's worried his daughter won't get a date to her first party. So he sets up a date with a friend of his, but doesn't meet the kid. The kid shows up, and it's Steve Urkel. Well, in that old pilot script that didn't sell was the character Steve Urkel.
Oh my God!
But it was just this wacky little character. It wasn't like we said, "Oh, Steve Urkel." We said, "Oh, a show about a family." We can convert that over the weekend to this series, and then we can keep shooting. We won't have to shut down, and they won't shoot us. So we just rewrote that script over the weekend, made it into a Family Matters episode, and it had the character of Steve Urkel. And again, it was just to get a script done. And then Jaleel came in, and I wasn't even at the casting session because it wasn't an important part.
Yeah.
And so Alan Eisenstock and Larry Mintz, who were running the show at the time, they did the casting session. And so we go to the cast reading on a Monday, and it's where you sit around the table, read the script, then they go rehearse, and then Friday you shoot it. Well, we sit down at the cast table, and this little kid there to play this bit part. I think it was only 2 scenes. I'm not sure, but this kid starts reading that role, and there are 4 of us executive producers there, right? There's me and my partner, we're writers, and really the guys that run the show, and then the 2 former executives, Bob Oyette and Tom Miller. But the four of us, it's our show, right? So this kid opens his mouth, starts reading, and we look at each other like, are you fucking kidding me? And blew us away. So while everybody was still sort of like grabbing donuts and wandering out after we finished reading, we got together in a corner and said, we have to get this guy on this television show.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Make it a character. That was the moment we thought, oh, well, Steve Urkel should be in the series. Well, same thing happened with Melanie Wilson, who happens to be my wife, on Perfect Strangers. She did a one episode, and before we finished shooting the episode, we went off and said, we need this actress and this character in this series.
No way.
Yeah. And so we made a deal. Well, that's a long story, but anyway, with Jaleel, we instantly wanted to add him to the cast. So that was just a hurry up godsend. That was just like, we're wandering in the wilderness and all of a sudden manna falls from the sky. You don't know where it came from, but you start eating. So
did you kind of like that? I know obviously you said and it's Michael Warren was your partner, right?
Yes.
So I know you like to be prepared, but was there kind of like a rush in having to like come up with a script like that quick? Like when it worked, like this moment, like I'm sure it's like kind of like super gratifying. Not like the other scripts weren't gratifying, but to have something like this happy accident happen, amazing.
Well, that's the nature of television. We all go through that.
Yeah.
And we go through that many times during the season. On Happy Days, when we started Happy Days, I got the call. It was over the Thanksgiving weekend. I got the call from Garry Marshall saying, hey, they're going to put Happy Days on the air. Come and run the show Monday. This is like Saturday. Yeah, we're going to start Monday. And we had maybe 3 scripts, I think, in rough form. We started shooting. We didn't have phones connected at our offices at Paramount. And we were shooting. It's a one-camera show. We're trying to shoot it like a movie. And boom. So television tends to be like that. You don't have a lot of preparation time. Most of us are adolescents still, and we waste our time. But it's always a train that just keeps on running. So running out of scripts and having to do a script over a weekend or overnight or something like that, that's pretty much, that happens quite often.
Yeah, one of the episodes that I went back and watched for Family Matters was the one that's been talked about a lot recently. And Reggie and Darius actually did like a Zoom call. I don't know if you saw it. They talked, and it was on, I'm trying to think what website it was. I saw the video of it on like a San Francisco newspaper website, but they talked about the good cop, bad cop episode from season 5 when the cop pulls over, racial profiles Eddie, and like super powerful episode.
It wasn't. I think All in the Family would sometimes say, let's do a show about a certain issue. We weren't looking to do issue-oriented shows per se.
Yeah.
But we did want them to be living a life that resonated with real life. We weren't doing the gritty life because it's a middle-class family in a middle-class neighborhood in Chicago. So it wasn't touched by a lot of the gritty stuff that you might see other places. We wanted to our first thought was to approach this. This is a family who happens to be Black, but we also want to be faithful to what that's like as much as we can. So I know Dave Duclon, who was really of vital importance to that show, who ultimately became the day-to-day showrunner of that series.
Oh, wow.
And he wanted to do a show that had to do with guns in school. We went through a lot of ramifications about how to do it. And I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the gun show, but also the police show with the racial profiling. And since Carl is a cop, it seemed a natural that he, of course, he would encounter that. And then what happens when he encounters it in that circumstance? So,
Yeah, no, he was great.
Yeah, we would do shows like that if it fit.
Yeah, and it was cool the way you did it too, because it was such a serious issue. So it was like there was 2 episodes within it. So it was that, and then the other one was Urkel going to the dentist. So he's going to the dentist and on the nitrous oxide, and like kicking everything, making like laughing at the doctor. But then you switch over, and then it's like a serious. So it was really cool, and it's cool. Like, well, not cool, but everything that's going on, that they connected again. And they were calling each other Pop, and it was pretty cool. Like the video, if I find it, I'll send it to you. But that was really cool seeing that. So now let's Happy Days, because you mentioned it a couple times. So I don't remember, like growing up, we always watched like TV Land. Like my dad was one of those dads that I think a lot of dads are like that. They want me to like. My dad wanted me to like what he liked. So Black Sabbath, Beatles, like I've old now I listen to records because I grew up on that stuff, but it would be like TV Land and Nick and Night and like watching Happy Days. So we watched the first one that was a credit of yours. It was the one where Richie gets drunk at the stag party. I think it was called Cup Runneth.
My Cup Runneth Over.
Yeah.
Is the title. That was the first episode we ever shot.
Oh, really?
There was the pilot, and the first episode we shot after that Thanksgiving when Garry said, "Okay, we have to shoot it now." Was the first episode was My Cup Runneth Over, and,
wow.
and now I don't remember every episode of Odd. I've done like 2,000 episodes.
Oh, I know. I
don't remember them all, but that one is memorable because of the first one, and we were hurrying up, and also the first scene. I'm sure this is true. The first scene we filmed on Happy Days was there's a drinking game in that show where they go to a party and there's a drinking game with little shots, and so, but it's just shots of beer. So the first scene we shot was the drinking game, and I get a call from the set that says, you might want to come down here. We may have a problem. And so I go down to the set, and again, we're shooting one camera, no audience. We're shooting like a movie. So I go down there, and non-alcoholic beer is available nowadays. Well, then I guess it was called near beer, but it was hard to find. So the prop guys had decided, well, we'll just use real beer. And so Anson and Ron, I forget who else was in it, but I don't know if Donnie was in it or not, but I know Anson and Ron, I go down there and they're very happy, and they got a glaze over their eyes, and they're doing take after take of this. So the first day, the biggest problem on Happy Days was the actors are drunk because we made them that way, because we forced them to do it.
That's crazy. That was the first one because Tom Bosley was so good with his interactions with drunk Richie.
Yeah. Well, again, I've really been blessed in 2 ways. One is I've been fortunate in working with actors that are really good actors.
Yeah.
And on family shows where you don't always find that to be the case. And also actors that are genuinely good people. Well, Tom Bosley was Mr. Broadway.
Yeah.
He played Fiorello and stuff. He really was the pro actor. So he really was the father of the set. He was the guy. And I used to give him notes and tell him what to do. He was very patient with me. I was 26 years old, didn't know shit. So he was very patient. But you got an actor like that. And Ron Howard, who I know you know him as a director now, but Ron was he probably still is, was a really good actor.
Oh, yeah.
You put Tom Bosley and Ron Howard in a scene together, you're going to get some really good films. So.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. So why did they switch to 3 cam? Who made that? A little television history.
the 3-cam or multiple camera show versus one camera like a movie is kind of gone in waves. You know, I Love Lucy invented that style of multiple camera in front of an audience. Desi Arnaz invented that back in the early 50s.
Yeah.
So then a whole lot of shows did that. And then through the early 60s up to the early 70s, it was mostly one camera shows. There were very few audience shows. And then the wave on the family hits, and now the wave is to go back to shooting multiple camera shows in front of an audience. So it goes in waves. But Happy Days probably got on the air because American Graffiti had been a hit the previous summer.
Oh yeah.
Almost anything gets on the air because something else worked that they all that everybody said would never work, and now it works, and now that's all they want. So when Happy Days went on, I think there was a 50s show on the other two major networks also. One of the reasons they let me be the showrunner was because they didn't think it was going to go. It's like, so yeah, give it to the kid. Who cares? And but so we did 38 episodes as a one camera show. We were shooting at night. We were shooting shows in 2.5 days. It was a killer.
Yeah.
And the fashion had now changed. Mary Tyler Moore, All in the Family. There were more and more audience shows or multiple camera shows. And so whether for fashion or whatever, and Garry Marshall had been doing The Odd Couple.
Oh yeah.
Which was an audience multi-camera show. So I think they just thought, well, let's switch this over, which was a good idea because we were truly killing ourselves trying to do American Graffiti in 2.5 days is really hard. So it was just I think it was more about this changing fashion, swinging back to audience comedy more than anything else. But certainly we had the actors that could do it.
Yeah, when watching it, I don't remember watching like the ones that looked like that because it felt like you said, it was like watching a movie. Exactly, the way the cuts and like the mannequin.
And then that was shutting us down every other day because they had a problem with the script. And I would, I had 26 years old. I thought I'd never die. So I was working 20 hours a day and the network would say, shut down, the script is no good. Now, if we shut down, it was just forget about it. It would just blow the show away financially. So I would tell them that I was shutting down, but we would keep shooting and just hope that whatever problems they had with the script, we could figure it out. And every time we did. But it was a good thing I was young.
What were some of the things? I'm sure there was a lot that you did. What's your job as like a showrunner? Is it like you're doing everything or making sure everybody's doing everything?
Well, now showrunner is a fairly recent term, like maybe the 90s or something. And it came about because it got to where every writer on a writing staff was getting a producer credit. Years ago, the studios figured out if a writer on staff wanted more money, if you gave him a producer credit, he would take that instead of money. So they started giving producer credits to everybody. But then you had to figure out, okay, because when I was running Happy Days, I was called a producer. I was the producer. Garry Marshall, Tom Miller, and Eddie Milkus were the executive producers. Well, and title of producer, 20 years later would have been executive producer, but titles didn't much mean anything. So the term showrunner came into being because you'd have to say, which executive producer is actually running the show? Who do you actually talk? Who do we listen to? And you would say, well, the guy running the show is so-and-so. So the term showrunner actually came into being so you could distinguish among the 48 producers who was actually in charge. A showrunner is in charge of everything. I mean, is responsible for everything.
Yeah.
Casting the stories, the rewriting the scripts, generating the stories, doing the final edits with the editor, the color of the set, the wardrobe approval, the showrunner gives notes directly to the actors after a run through if it's a multi-camera show. The showrunner is interacting with the actors very often a lot like a director.
Yeah.
So it really is, you're responsible for everything. You still have a director, and the directors direct, but a showrunner is going to be in there too, and whatever the showrunner says is what goes.
Yeah.
It's a producer's medium. It's a showrunner's medium. Television is. And so the director is basically in charge of a movie in all aspects. Well, that applies to a showrunner on TV.
That's wild. Your first time doing it, and you have to like talk to Tom Bosley and Ron Howard. How'd you learn? Was Garry there too to be able to help you out, or was he doing it like if it didn't work, they're like, hey Garry, the show didn't do good. It's like, whoa, no, that was on Bill. That was Bill's job.
Yeah. Well, it's if you make a mistake, it's on you.
Yeah.
With Happy Days, Garry was almost completely occupied with The Odd Couple.
Oh yeah.
The Odd Couple got Emmy nomination. The Odd Couple had Tony Randall and Jack Klugman, these terrific actors that got nominated for Emmys, and it took a lot of time. That show, it took almost all of his attention. So to a large degree, I was left completely alone with Happy Days. Garry would come in as much as he could. He would visit me at midnight when I was sitting up over the script that was going to be, the pages that were going to be shot the next day. He would tell me things like, the key in producing television is to not fall down. And great advice. And anyway, so he was just very busy. When the mistakes were made in Happy Days, it was my fault. I mean, It was legitimately my fault. There was, in the beginning, and I know you've heard all this, but there was the network didn't want Fonzie to wear a leather jacket.
Yeah.
And so I had to play games with it. I didn't have the power to just tell the network to go screw themselves. Garry had that power if he chose to use it. He didn't like to use that very much unless it was important, which was wise. But with, for instance, the leather jacket, they would say, you have to have him wear a windbreaker like the other boys. And so I've said, okay. And then the network would come to the dailies, the rushes, the film we shot the previous day. They would come the next day and see it in the screening room, Paramount. So they would come the next day and say, well, he's wearing his leather jacket. And I said, oh, God, I forgot. Right. Oh, well, but we've established it in this episode. We can't change it now, but I'll be sure and change it the next step. Well, we did that for about 16 episodes where I kept forgetting to not let him wear a leather jacket. And also with a haircut. He had what we used to call a duck's ass haircut, and they wanted him to get a haircut so he'd be more like the other boys. And I would do the same game. I would say, I forgot to get him a haircut. Well, it's been established it won't match if I get him a haircut now. So we played that game for quite a while. And until finally Garry had to step in and go talk to Barry Diller, who was the head of ABC at the time, and fight for the leather jacket and the haircut and fight for Fonzie to be Fonzie. But it was a big fight just for those two obvious things.
Yeah. No, and it's cool. I noticed the director of the first episode, The Cup Runneth Over, was a big time director, sitcoms, Jerry Paris.
Yeah, Jerry, crazy Jerry. He was insane. I mean, I don't mean that to be derogatory. He was unfortunately truly insane. We all knew that.
Yeah,
and we always knew that. but terrific director, and we all loved him, even though he was insane. I say that with love.
Yeah.
Jerry often is credited with directing all of Happy Days. He didn't direct all of Happy Days. The first couple of seasons, we had various directors. Jerry directed the most episodes the first 2 seasons, and
Wow.
then when it went to a multi-camera show, then he was the director every week. So yeah, I didn't remember who directed the first episode.
I just noticed it, because I'm working with this. Well, I guess we're kind of buddies now with the actor Larry Henkin. I'm helping him put together like his I guess memoirs. We're trying to put together like some kind of book or something. So I've been talking to him. I randomly interviewed him like in October, and then we've been talking like every Saturday. He's like I talk to him more than I talk to my dad sometimes. He calls me like 2 times a week, but he has stories about Jerry Paris.
Yes, everybody has. Everybody who was back then.
Yeah.
I think the funniest event I've ever been to in my life was Jerry Paris's funeral. And he may have been at Jerry's funeral.
Maybe.
This was long after Happy Days.
Yeah.
Where all these great Dick Van Dyke and Dennis Weaver, all these great actors and producers got up and spoke about Jerry. Every single one of them had a story about Jerry that was incredible. I mean, stories where you can't believe he did that. That was Jerry Paris. And I have everybody who knew Jerry, if his name comes up and we're anywhere, if we're in a meeting or at lunch, or we're just passing on the street, his name, this went on for years, maybe not so much now, but where you mentioned Jerry Paris and everybody had a story. And and they were all just really kind of incredible, but yes.
Yeah. No, Larry was telling me about, because he was on Hey Landlord, and in the episode he played
one of Gary's shows too.
Yeah, so he played a Hell's Angel on an episode, and he was moving into the apartment building, and he showed up in wardrobe, and during the episode, because he said you know this, you don't really meet the director till the day you get on set, so he is getting in there. And Jerry gave him no direction the whole time. Yeah. And then Larry saw him at like a party like 2 weeks later. He walked up to him and he goes, Hey man, I got to ask you, why didn't you like look at me or give me direction? And he said, I'm sorry. I really thought you were a Hell's Angel. And he used to grab.
That's Jerry Paris. And that's one of the nice stories.
Yeah, no, I know. No, but he used to always grab Larry's cheek in public and say, ooh, what a face. And then Larry worked with him a bunch on like a couple movies too, but that's really wild. Then I saw that name, I'm like, I feel like I know this guy just from all these stories about him. But
I could talk for just talking about Jerry Paris.
That's amazing.
I mean, if you want, but you.
Yeah. So then you worked on, so obviously you had the connection with Garry Marshall, and then you worked on like Laverne and Shirley, and like a lot of those shows. Yeah. Was it hard to like venture off because you're the showrunner? Were you still doing that up like throughout the whole Happy Days run?
Well, when the show switched to a multi-camera show, the audience show, I had never produced a multi-camera show. Oh, okay. I had been a producer on The Partridge Family. I'd been a producer writer on a show called Room 222.
Yeah.
I had worked on all one-camera shows. So I was replaced with Lowell Gans and Mark Rothman, who had been on The Odd Couple.
Oh, okay.
So I'm done with Happy Days, and I went off and did other things. And then I came back 2 or 3 more times, different years of Happy Days. I think 76 maybe or something. And then I came back for somewhere in the late 70s or early 80s. Garry Marshall came and said, Happy Days, it'll probably be his last season. We'd love to get some of the old guys together. Old guys, we're still in their 20s, to be on the show. So we came over just as consultants and limited hours and stuff. And then it went another, I think, 4 years. But so I kept leaving and coming back. So,
but that was like big.
A lot of us worked on other shows.
Yeah.
I mean, when Garry had Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Mork and Mindy, and then he would have others every once in a while. A lot of times we would work on somebody else's show, or, you know, it was sort of a family in that regard. Even if we weren't there, we were doing other things.
Yeah.
We would sort of all work together in whatever way Garry wanted.
And working on
That was
Happy Days,
our
like,
godfather.
yeah, to like being the showrunner, because it's crazy when you look at your IMDb, and then like, well, not your IMDb, your the Bill IMDb in '77, all the pilots that you created in 1 year.
Yeah,
that's phenomenal.
This was what year? 70?
In '77, it's like Please Stand By, Front Desk.
Well, but that was. What am I thinking? Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, we did a lot of us.
That's a lot in 1 year to come up with that.
I thought you were.
Did you meet? Were you working with Michael then, or no?
I teamed up with Michael after I left Happy Days for the first time. Then we teamed up. So whenever that was.
How'd you meet him?
We had been friends in real life.
Oh, okay.
And we made each other laugh. He had never written anything that I was aware of.
Yeah.
But we were working on developing a movie. I had bought the rights to a book because I wanted to make this movie. And he and I were sort of pitching out the movie, not with the intention of him being a writer on it. I was going to write it, but we were going to produce it together because he went to USC Film School, yada, yada. And then after we worked on figuring out the story for the movie, I said, you know, we should write this together because what we've been doing in this room, making each other laugh and stuff, that's writing. So you can write, so why don't we write? And so that, then the first script we did together was a script for the third season of Happy Days called, I don't know, it's when Fonzie's motorcycle got destroyed, but it was a good script. So that was the first script we ever wrote together.
Oh wow! So that long? So you guys were together for a long time. That's cool that you had that relationship outside of it, and then it merged into the entertainment.
Yeah. And of course, working together ruined the friendship, but that's happens eventually. No. It worked out pretty well.
Yeah, no, that happens. If you think about if you look at, there's obviously some, no, even Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld had a riff. Murray and Harold Ramis, it happens, I guess, when you're working so much together. And
it happens way more than not.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of pressure. I mean, doing a television show, any hour, half hour, doesn't matter. But especially the relentless nature of doing a half hour, even comedy, it's a very high stress job. Now, it happens. I like it. I like the stress. It makes my mind clearer. It's like I like to equate it to Ted Williams watching a fastball come in and how time slows down. That may not be an apt comparison, but but I liked the pace. But it's a lot of pressure and it makes people go crazy.
So what was like you said, you were like right in the thick of it. 10 days in, you write a script that gets made.
Yeah.
When was it when you were on Happy Days that you're like, I'm going to do that? I know from a young age, you always wanted to do it when you guys got that TV set. But was there a time that you knew like, this is what you're going to do for your life? Like you're actually like secure in this industry?
Oh, secure?
Well, you never.
I can't remember a time when I felt secure, but again, that's all I ever wanted to do. So I don't know what I would have done if it hadn't been for the guy named Arnold Margolin, who got me in the door at Love American Style.
Yeah.
And the show hadn't been down the hall that also wanted me to write a script. And if Garry hadn't been I really don't know what else I would have done for a living. I don't know. I just never thought of anything else.
That's good. Maybe that's why you did what you did.
But I did that.
So obviously you've worked on a lot of amazing shows, but the ones that I have on here, we'll talk about. So like Perfect Strangers.
Yeah.
So were you there from the beginning? Did that start in '86?
never buy a yellow water bottle. It can be very misleading.
Yeah, I know.
Perfect Strangers, which is the heart of it still is the key to my heart.
Yeah.
We were brought in, we had been producing The Love Boat during what I like to call its sinking season, the night season. So Love Boat had an odd shooting schedule. Love Boat started in the spring when most shows were on hiatus. Well, the reason they shot then was so they could get TV stars, other TV stars would be available.
Sure, yeah.
So it was out of sync with the normal TV season. Well, so when that season of Love Boat ended, it was like, the beginning of the year, 86, and Tom Miller and Bob Boyette were exec producing a show created by Dale McCraven called Perfect Strangers. So they called us up and said, "Hey, we're about to shoot the pilot, and we'd like you guys to run the show. So come over and watch rehearsals and watch us shoot the pilot and get connected with it so that you could produce the show if it gets on the air." So we would go over and watch run-throughs and watch them shoot the show. And of course, Balky was coming off Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
Just like Reggie was coming off Die Hard.
It's crazy.
It was based on, wow, what a outstanding small part in that movie.
Yeah.
And Markland Baker, excuse me, Markland Baker was not in the show at the time. Excuse me while I cough to death.
No problem. He was a big theater guy too, right? Markland
Baker. I would like to die on camera. What?
He's a big theater guy, right? Before that, Markland Baker?
Mark was and is a big theater guy. He lives in New York. But now he wasn't in the role of Larry in the pilot. But then when the pilot sold, the network had one note: replace the co-lead, which is a big note.
Yeah, and to get picked up, that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we're on the air, find another co-star, which I'd never been presented with that. Well, so we auditioned people. Now, Markland Baker had just done My Favorite Year. I think it had come out, I don't know, the year before or 2 years before or something. And of course, he was brilliant in that. So we loved him. But we screen tested, I think, 5 actors, including Mark. And of course, Mark, the other actors were very good. Mark just blew everybody away. So now we started, again, it was a mid-season replacement. So once again, hurry up and shoot this, even though there's no prep time. So we did the first of 6 episodes with Mark, and it was a life changer for me. I'd never worked with actors. I mean, I worked with some very good actors, but they were the most creative actors I had ever worked with. They completely changed my mind about writing and directing and producing. It just opened up a whole world to me.
Wow. And then from there, when did T.G.I.F start? Was that when Family Matters was on, or?
No, it was before Family Matters. Perfect Strangers in the spring. It was again mid-season replacement. They put it on after what's the show? I've forgotten the name of the show. On Tuesday night, in kind of a plum spot, and it was in the top 10 for those 6 episodes. So, because this is how networks work, because it was successful there, they decided, let's move it somewhere else. So the following first full season, they moved it against Michael Landon's show, Not Touched by an Angel. It was an angel show.
Highway to Heaven?
Highway to Heaven.
Yeah.
I get my angel shows mixed up. And Michael Landon's show was a big hit.
Yeah.
Well, we went on opposite that Michael Landon show and basically beat it. Not by a lot, but by enough. So it's like we were a giant killer, right?
Yeah.
Within the industry. So now they saw, wow, it's really working there. So let's move it again, see if we can kill it. So That's Full House was on Friday night, and it was not doing great. It was really in jeopardy. So the idea was, and they didn't ask my opinion about this, by the way. The idea was to move it to the leadoff slot Friday night, put Full House behind it, and maybe create a half-hour sort of family-oriented shows block. I think it was called T.G.I.F from the beginning, but I could be wrong. But somebody came up with a name. I think it was Tom Miller. I've heard other people say somebody else came up with the T.G.I.F idea for the block, but I think it was Tom Miller.
Yeah.
So that was the first go at it, was Perfect Strangers, Full House, and then whatever. That built an audience, and so then they flipped Full House to 8 o'clock, and then Perfect Strangers maybe to 9 o'clock. I don't remember. I think anyway. Then that's when they really created the block, and by then I think we may have added Family Matters. I'm not sure how the order worked in terms of adding the shows.
No, I was trying to look it up too. I couldn't find it anywhere. But the one thing I read that was phenomenal about Perfect Strangers and how much of a following it had, that even not towards the end, but like you're talking about, they moved it. I was reading they moved it from Friday to Saturday night because they used to have like the agent shows, like Who's the Boss, and I forget the other one, but they use Perfect Strangers as the opener to get those shows more ratings. So talk about a show that just bounced around.
I don't remember originally what was in the block other than Perfect Strangers and Full House. Who's the Boss was never in the block.
No, there's something like Saturday nights. They had Who's the Boss on like a Saturday night.
No, I don't remember it ever, even at the end, I don't remember it being on Saturday night.
Yeah.
Partridge Family was moved to Saturday night against All in the Family. That was interesting, but I was gone by then to Happy Days. So.
But that's crazy. If you look at T.G.I.F. at one point, it was like the Bill Bickley show, and obviously there's people you work with.
Yeah, we usually had 3 of the 4 shows in the block most of the time.
How do you manage that, like working wise? No sleep.
No, I think right around the time of Perfect Strangers, we started figuring out how to do it well.
Yeah.
I mean, do it like grown-ups. Most TV shows, showrunners don't act like grown-ups.
Yeah.
They don't work, they don't stay ahead of it, and they get behind on scripts, and they have to work till 4 a.m. And there's a lot of reasons that happens that have to do with not growing up. So we learned. Ron Howard and I used to in the latter season meaning when Ron left Happy Days when his contract was and started that crazy idea of directing movies. But Ron and I used to sit around at Paramount, and I was just consulting in the show, and of course Ron was still doing it, and we would talk about how he would say, we don't need as much time down there on the set as we don't need all week to do these shows. If we actually like worked when we were there, we could do it in a couple of days. And I would say, the way we do shows and scripts like that, if we just came in the morning like it was a real job and actually got to work and were organized, we could do that too. So we used to sit around and talk about how inefficient it seemed like everybody in the business was, and how much easier it would be if you just like worked when you were there. And it was a new concept. And of course, Ron is a very special person. But after that, more and more, I started thinking about, if we actually use the time we're at the office to actually work on the show, it really would. So anyway, that was when I started growing up as a showrunner.
Yeah. And
so by the time we got to T.G.I.F, when we got Family Matters on the air, typically if you got a second show on the air, it was like, well, which show are you really gonna do? You have to give up one. But I went home and had this marker board And I figured out in a week, well, the most important places to be involved in the show or this phase of the script or this phase of the production. And if we shot this show on this night and this show on the other night, we could actually be involved in all the most important parts of the production week. So I came back and said, well, we'll do both of them. Because all you have to do is be organized and like make decisions, which most showrunners are terrified of doing. Well, like Chuck Lorre can make a decision. That's one of the reasons he's able to do so many shows. Well, I was fine with making decisions because if you make the wrong decision, they'll kill you.
Yeah.
But what the hell? You're going to die sometime. So doing 2 actually turned out to be pretty easy. So when there was 3, we just reorganized the week 2. So then when it got up to 4, then the show that had, after a while, a show knows how to sort of runs itself.
Yeah, that's true.
The act, everybody's familiar with it so much that it doesn't require as much attention. It just requires overseeing and in important parts. So we just would do that with multiple shows. It wasn't that hard to me. That's when it got interesting to me. It was like the day was from the time I got there to the time I went home, which wasn't really late. We didn't work late night. We wouldn't even let our showrunner producers keep the staff, never let them work on the weekend and not keep the staff past about 10 o'clock at night. Because we said after 10 o'clock, the return is reduced. It's just ineffective.
Yeah.
And the creative mind needs time to recharge. So we would insist that they get the work done during the week and let the staff, creative people recharge. And that worked.
And then how did, like, step by step, was that somebody approached you guys and said, hey, we want to do a show like blank, or did you guys come up with that one?
Well, step by step seems a little derivative to some people. But when you get one show on the air and it's working, it's easier to get another show on the air.
Yeah.
You get 2 shows on the air, Perfect Strangers, Family Matters, then they're asking you, what do you want to do? And you're in the development season, you're going in at the last minute, and you're kind of just telling the network what you're going to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're guaranteed on the air necessarily or anything like that, but it gets easy. The whole development process gets more streamlined. Well, when it came to step by step, I think it was probably Tom Miller. Again, Tom Miller and Bob Riette had been really good network and studio executives in their career. They weren't writers, but I think Tom said, let's do a blended family. And he started talking about, see, they get married and he has kids and she has kids. And we said, I think I've seen that show. So if we're going to do a blended family, let's don't do Brady Bunch. Let's do something at least. Blended family is a generic thing. Nobody owns the blended family concept. So we said, well, let's just do our own version of what a blended family might be. If it's a really sexy guy and a really sexy woman, and they're really hot for each other, like they were 18, and they get together, and it so happens they also have all this baggage. That sounded interesting. So we went to the network and said, well, this is what we want to do. And they said, okay, which you don't get to hear much.
Yeah.
And then Patrick Duffy was coming off. Dallas had just ended.
Yeah.
And I didn't want Patrick Duffy. He's now one of my very, very closest friends. I thought he was a dramatic actor, Dallas, and the muscle jaw flex kind of drama, and He-Man and stuff. Is this great hunk of a leading man. Well, I didn't think he could be funny. Duh. So somebody gave me a gag reel from Dallas, all the outtakes and goofing around they did. And Patrick Duffy, I'd never met him.
Yeah.
And he was hilarious. So then we had a meeting with him, And in the room, he was hilarious. And Patrick's a really funny guy, which is probably the reason we're still friends. And then Suzanne was coming off some failure, because we all have failures sometimes.
Yeah.
So Suzanne was available. So then there's Patrick and Suzanne. So we thought, okay, they're both still their sexy selves, so they'll fit for this. And then we just started again looking for kids, and we found some really good actors again in our looking for kids. So all of a sudden we had a blended family show to add to the mix, which was, I guess, turned out to be a good mix.
Yeah, we watched that pilot too, and that was pretty good because I don't remember. Obviously, they were kind of rough, Patrick Duffy's kids, but their house was like trashed. In the opening scene when they show them in the kitchen, the house is just like a mess. They don't have any milk, and I don't remember that.
Kind of the idea that his family was rougher, her family was a little more sophisticated, and because how do you design? Well, drama too, but comedy, you take people, everything is an odd couple form.
Oh, yeah.
It's always, every marriage really is an odd couple. It kind of makes relationships actually work.
That's the truth.
They're not exactly the same. So it was fun. And again, we had a cast with Patrick and Suzanne and all those young actors and Patrika Darbo and some others that were there at the beginning that were not there later. It was just a bunch of really nice people. It was a television show can be a hellhole, or it can be a very good experience. And it's like a family. It can be a good one or a very, very bad one. And you can be on Roseanne and want to kill people. But virtually every show I was able to be involved in was a show of basically very good people.
That's awesome. Another guy that was a late addition, maybe not to the extent of Urkel, but Cody was such a great character. That was like, even going back, we watched his first appearance episode. And man, he was so funny, so good. And it was cool that like he stuck around.
Yeah, he was, and I really loved that guy. He was a very unusual guy. He was very stream of consciousness, just in the moment kind of guy. And if he was in a scene and a camera was passing by, he hadn't noticed it, he would actually point out that the camera was right in the middle of the scene. He was very much like in tune, going with whatever happened. He was very a unique kind of actor, but and he had a lot of personal problems, but he was unique and a real good-hearted guy who straightened his life out later. And again, you don't come up with what they call breakout characters intentionally. They're accidents that happen. And although by then, Tom and Bob and I and Michael, we had been involved in some cases where we had shows with remarkable breakout characters. When I produced, obviously, Happy Days, Fonzie was not the star, and all of a sudden this character becomes what became known as a breakout character.
I know.
And then the thing with Urkel, that was an accident. And so now they were saying on Step by Step, where's your breakout character? And we kept trying to explain, you don't make those. They happen. You don't plan those. We plan characters. Breakout characters are the surprises. They just happen. You don't, there's no way to do that. But we added Cody in the hopes that if he was somebody very different than the family members, it might have that quality. It worked out better than we even thought it would with him. And he was a unique, again, but still, we could have cast any number of people that it would have been good, but not have that special, unpredictable sort of quality that he did.
Yeah, no, that's remarkable. It's so crazy, just all the shows like you were like TGIF, and that was like my age group, and I'm sure a little bit older and a little bit younger, like that generation. Like that's what you did on Friday nights. You watch that, and then Saturday night you watch like Snick on Nickelodeon and SNL. But like those are like that was the weekend. Those two things.
Well, that was probably right near the end of the era where families or parts of families would watch television together, and where you knew where shows were.
Yeah.
There were still just the, counting Fox, there were 4 major networks. It was before the internet exploded and cable providers and all that so much. So every night of the week, a lot of people could name what shows were on any given night of the week.
Yeah.
So there was a routine, a sort of ritual with television. That's gone now because shows I want to watch, I have to go on the internet and do a search to find out how I can find them. You know? So that era is over, but it was still the era when people would watch television on an actual television set and usually with other people in the room. Now, of course, you watch it on your watch. So it's different, but that was still that era, and that block of shows I think worked well because of that.
It worked well together. And then there was like the crossover episodes. The characters would be on each other's shows. I think Urkel was on Step by Step or one of them.
Yeah, and that was we liked doing that. It wasn't easy to do because you did have different worlds.
Yeah.
I mean, all modern day, of course. Crossing over from Happy Days, that was a totally different era, which wasn't part of T.G.I.F, Bill, so remember that. But yeah, when we could do that. But again, television is so frantic to plan things like that when you have shows all in production simultaneously. It's pretty tough to.
We were grown up and organized by then, thankfully.
Yeah, we were organized. That requires an unusual level of organization. We were organized. We did try to, in production ways, we tried to connect the shows.
So, Bill, this has been awesome. One thing that's really cool, because this is on your IMDb, and I've interviewed a few writers, and I know you've done more than that, but I interviewed the guy that wrote like Poltergeist and Poltergeist 2 and a bunch of other stuff. I was like, oh, so what if this is like early on in these interviews that I did. So now I'm smart about it because I was like, oh, I haven't seen are you still working? And he's like, I write every day. And he's like, because he just hasn't got it made. And then you look at all these big time writers that write films and TV shows. Some just, it just doesn't hit. And obviously you've been still working. There's a lot of other things we're not covering. But it's pretty cool. Gladys Knight, a TV comedy series. That's really
that came kind of out of the blue because after the TGIF shows went off the air, I was pretty much burned out on not just half-hour comedy, but family, what we called 8 o'clock family shows. I'd done that by then for 30 years, and I sort of like didn't have it in me anymore. I'd done that. So I was only interested in doing things that were divergent, and which is the way you stop selling things, is by doing anything different.
Yeah.
It scares the shit out of them. So,
Bill, you got a new family? No, but I do have a thriller I'm writing. They're like, just give us another family show.
Yeah, I did realize that because I never set out when I came to California. I never intended to be doing shows about families. I had a very dysfunctional family for real life. It was like I referred to as a 3-person insane asylum. So it had nothing to do with anything you might call a normal family.
Yeah.
So I realized, oh yeah, well, that makes sense. I would have kept trying to create a family that I wished had been my family. So that was the driving force. So I thought, okay, well, that's what I was trying to do. So I did that. And so anyway, time passed. And I wrote a number of things that are really, really good, but haven't been produced yet. And then out of the blue, a friend of Gladys Knight's, called me up. And she didn't hadn't known how to reach. She'd been trying to reach me for I think weeks or months, and because Gladys had asked her. Now, I'm not saying this to praise myself, but who's the best guy to do a show with? Now, part of that wasn't just quality-wise, but in terms of temperament, I guess, and making it a happy experience as opposed to a horrific experience, which, some great shows have been horrific experiences for people doing. So this person said, well, Bill Bickley is, and she had worked with me years before, and had been at Warner Brothers on other shows. But anyway, so she told Gladys about me. So I met with Gladys and her husband, William, and we just really hit it off. So that made me want to design a show that was a little different than what I've done in the past, but still had some of the same qualities. So we've been doing that. We don't have a place for it yet, and I heard there's a pandemic going around at this particular time, which makes you unable to shoot anything.
Yeah.
So that's kind of on hold. And so once that was on hold, she had some interest in a movie about her life. So they asked me to get into that. So I've been working on that. So, but that was mainly out of the blue. Because I like Gladys so much, I thought, well, I want to come through for her, so I'll do that. But it's kind of the way the business works. You plan to go this direction, and then fate comes along and takes you this direction. But that's kind of life as it is.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It's funny. She always pops in on. We watch CNN on New Year's Eve every year because we're like getting older and we don't go out like that, and we have a daughter, so they always go to her like cooking in her kitchen for her family. She's like really funny. Yeah, and
like I say, I really, I of course knew her music. I mean, it pervades the half a century, but meeting her, getting to know her, and again getting to know her husband, who is an amazing guy. And our friend Joyce, who's also involved, who's connected us, it was just a happy thing. And so what we all wanted was like, if we're going to do a TV show, we want to do it with people we like.
Yeah.
And that we enjoy being around. We could start that way, and it might end up being a happy, fun experience. So that's what we're all trying to figure out how to do is to do a show and also enjoy doing it.
Well, hopefully this is over soon. You can start doing that. Bill, it's been awesome. I'm so happy that we were able to connect and I was able to pick your brain about just your career, man. Because it's so cool that you were thrown into it, so to speak, and then you were able to come out of it. So that was like the greatest thing to ever happen, that Garry Marshall put you in charge at 23, and then you learned, baptism by fire.
Well, that's often how you learn things is you say yes to things that you don't really know how to do. Or you may think you do, but you really don't. And then it's under fire that you really have to learn it. And you can learn a lot of things when you're saying, okay, I'm not going to give in to the pressure. I'm just going to move forward. When I used to go to work on Happy Days, again, at 26 years old, I'd never run a show. And all of a sudden this show was in my lap, and it was very difficult. I was scared to death. And I would drive to the studio and I would park and I would make a deal with myself that when I got out of the car, I would leave my fear in the car. And when I got out of the car, I would pretend that I knew what I was doing to myself. I would not say that to others, but I would pretend, I would act like a person who actually knew how to do this. And I did that every day. And eventually I didn't have to make the deal in the car. The deal was when I got back in the car, then I could be as afraid as I wanted to be. And then after a while, I didn't need to make that deal.
And it worked.
Yeah, it was fun. It's all been fun.
And here's a question. So this has been great. So here's a personal question, like writing wise. So like, how do people get things made nowadays? Like as like an independent writer, like me and my buddy wrote a pilot. And so how do you even get that to anybody nowadays? Is it just like query letters, like the way people used to do, and just send them to agencies or production companies?
Well, I taught a writing class every spring for about 7 years with people coming out of college who wanted to do this, and of course that's a really important question.
Yeah.
And I wish I had an answer to that.
I don't think there's a perfect answer. I've reached out to like 5 different people, all different like aspects of the industry, and they kind of each gave me like piecemeal. So I'm basically just going to do it all and just make phone calls and do what I have to do.
Well, yeah, I used the word persistence right at the beginning of our talk. Yeah. I'll tell you a story to illustrate what I think is the key. And this is what I would tell young writers. I've told them for a long time. A writer named Ken Eston, he had a friend who knew me. This is back in the 70s. And so he was trying to get his script to me. And so the mutual friend gave me his script to read, his spec script. And at the time, I didn't have a show. It was after I left Happy Days. I didn't have a show on the air at the time. And I kept setting up meetings for him to come to my house to see what I thought about the script. And I kept not reading the script, and I would move the meeting time after time. Maybe next week. Then came the day the doorbell rang, and I realized I forgot to postpone the meeting. He's here. So I had him sit in the living room, and I ran upstairs and I read his script real fast. And I came down and I said, your spec script, it was a spec Bob Newhart or something. Your spec script is one of the best scripts I've ever read by anybody, professional or otherwise. You can make a living in this business. You can do this really well already. He was about to quit and go back to Iowa or someplace. And I said, don't go back to Iowa yet. Hang in there, because I promise you're going to be making a living at this very soon. Well, I didn't have a show on the air, so I couldn't hire him to do anything. So I gave the script to as many friends of mine who were running television shows this time. None of them thought this was wonderful. I'm thinking, what's the matter with you people? I used to like these people, and obviously they're idiots. And I wasn't wrong. It was a solid script. No. And finally, the brothers that were running Taxi, I didn't give the script to them. They were on the Paramount lot where most of my friends were, but the guys running Taxi, I guess somehow this spec script had gotten in their stack of spec scripts, which every producer has. Yeah. Read my script and you put it on a stack. And then when nothing's going on, you might pull the script off the stack and read it. You might not. They happened, as I was trying fruitlessly to get people to spark to this guy's script, they happened to pull his script out. I think they had it 2 years, maybe longer.
Wow.
And they happened to pull it down and read it. And they had the same reaction I did. They brought Ken Eston in and gave him a script assignment on Taxi. The first script he wrote for Taxi, the first time as a professional, won the Writers Guild Award for Best Half-Hour Script. And he later became a producer of Taxi.
Oh my God.
Hired on the staff and became one of the show running producers, and later created that silly cartoon show that's run for about 400 years. He was one of the creators of
on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So all that to illustrate, it is persistence.
Yeah.
And it is, you keep writing and writing. The more you write, the better you get. And everybody, the safest thing to say to anybody about a project, me or a new writer, is no. No is always safe. You don't have to explain no.
Yeah.
To say yes, then if it doesn't work, the executive, whoever it is kind of in trouble. So no is, they're always looking for a way to say no.
Yeah.
But not everybody. And so what I would tell these young writers is you don't take rejection personally. Keep after it, because when you do get the breakthrough, when you write the little 8-minute script for Love American Style, then all of a sudden, because somebody else took a gamble on you, now you have sort of like, there's a light around you that makes it easier for other people to say yes. So you keep trying to be the best writer you can be, and you keep trying to get people to read your stuff. And it's very hard to sell a pilot anytime, although it goes in waves. Sometimes they're looking for these pilots from anywhere in the world, and that's what they're looking for. Other times, they really would like for you to write the script in advance, even for guys like me or guys that are currently successful.
Yeah.
So that goes in waves. They follow each other. Oh, the fashion is this. Oh, the fashion is that. They're scared shitless. Everybody in the business is scared. But then there's that Charles brothers, Glenn and Les Charles, it's on Taxi. They'll take the script out of the stack and they read it, and the light goes on. And most stories I know about people that have actually gotten in the business and then done well, it's generally, it took me a couple of weeks. It took Ken Eston 3 years. Am I better than him? No. He was a brilliant writer, and I was brilliant too, I'd like to think. But that wasn't what made the difference. You just with anything, you just keep on.
Oh yeah.
You just keep on. That's what you do.
And it's fun. We've been doing it during quarantine. We used to write when we were like what you were talking about when you were really young, writing stuff. We used to write like horror and film these little shorts. Like we were like 10, 11, 12 and into high school. And then he went away to college. He has a master's in writing. So, but through being safe, he lives only like 30 minutes. I'm in Jersey. He's only like 30 minutes from our hometown. So we just write over Zoom for like 3 or 4 hours a week.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's like a good hobby too, but thank you for that advice. And Bill, this has been a blast, man.
Right. Well, keep writing. That makes you better. Writing makes a writer better. It's just
that's all you can do.
A simple equation.
Thanks, man.
Well, it's a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you because it's my favorite subject. It's me. So who wouldn't enjoy that? No,
I have to thank Sue. I'll have to message Susie and say thank you because that was great when you sent that email. Yeah, I was like, you passed the nice guy test.
Oh, good. That's a test I'd like to pass. And I've really enjoyed. You ask smart questions, and you're knowledgeable, and you're smart.
No, I've learned. I've done this I started like February of last year as like kind of like nobody's going to talk to me, and then just the people I've been able to talk about. Just it's fun doing the homework, like watching these stuff. Like my wife enjoys it, so just going back and watching these. It's cool. It makes us like feel young again. It's like everybody. There's like the nostalgic. You put on a show and you're like. Almost like 8, 9 years old with your family watching a show but it's on Hulu on the internet. It's not the way it used to be, but
I've enjoyed it. I'm glad you have. So.
Thanks, Bill.
You bet.
Stay safe. I'll talk to you soon, man.
Okay, anytime.
Man, wasn't Bill awesome? The stories that he told and just how down to earth he was. I love talking to him. We talked for 90 minutes almost, my longest one yet. And it was a lot of fun. And he was super genuine. And his advice at the end was something that me and my buddy are taking to heart with the pilot that we're writing for a sci-fi show called Cat's Creek. And it's really cool that he took the time to talk to me. And I feel like I'm going to be talking to him again because Bill was amazing. And don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. Don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.